Okay, thank you so much. I'm here with Marybeth Takao, who's coming to us and doing this interview from Tokyo, Japan. Marybeth, I had the pleasure of meeting back in October of 2025 when I got to go over and visit her in Japan and learn a lot about the trade ecosystem and the environment in Japan. Marybeth has worked for global affairs for 26 years, specifically for the government of Alberta, working over there in Japan to help Canadian companies gain market entry and showing them the ropes. 26 years in this job, that's a lot of experience.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. Thank you very much, Peter, for having me today. I've worked for Alberta for 25, and as coming in May, it'll be 26. And it's a real great opportunity, different roles. My most recent role, however, is with the specifically designed with the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation. And it's a very, great opportunity to see all the Alberta producers, like you said, exclusively for Alberta, working for, with the ministry to bring people for into Japan to do export and diversify into Japan.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you tell us a bit more about your role and like what it involves over there and how you specifically work to support companies?
Yeah, the specifics, it's a kind of wide range, but again, just for agriculture, so agri-food and agriculture. And I do have a role to do both investment and trade. Admittedly, I'm a little bit stronger on the trade force because I've been at that part a bit longer
Mhm.
than I have on investment. But I do team up with my partner here in market, also Invest Alberta Corporation to try to gain leads, to give information of market trends as much as possible, to have arrange for business to business meetings. The real goal is obviously to diversify our market so that we can get our products or into Japan, or investment into Alberta, and that to create jobs,
Mhm.
to create jobs and economic wealth. How does that boil down? It's very difficult to explain. Everybody wants me to quickly give them a business to business meeting. And I think, Peter, you and I have had this discussion before. Sometimes I've got to make sure that you're ready for that meeting, whether it be on the investment side and working with my, Invest Alberta Corporation teammate there, or to make sure that you're actually regulation ready for Japan. So sometimes they'll say, "Ah, just come and get me a meeting." Like, whoa, wait a minute. And it's not a matter of gatekeeping. It's a matter of like really helping you to be ready, to make sure that when those questions are coming that you can't answer, that you and I are working them out together, rather than you and your potential buyer who will then say, "I don't know, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This woman doesn't know what she's doing." So that's
Can you-
kind of in a nutshell what I do.
Yeah, can you give us an example of what that means to be market ready? Um, Maybe drawing on a unnamed real life situation.
Yeah, that's really good. I recently spoke with a client who has been successful in the market, and she said, I said, "What would you do differently?" She said she was really export eager, but not export ready. And some of that, what happened is like, we bringing in samples for a trade show, for example, and she was bringing them in and sending them to me, and there's a certain amount of paperwork to fill out. But again, it was just a simple paperwork glitch, and we called it, being in customs jail. So
Mhm.
the materials stayed in jail for a very long time, and we got them out by the skin of our teeth, and had to have like the last 3 days of the trade show that we were able to display it. But that would be a real life example. There's a tremendous amount of paperwork, and if, food, whether it be food and cosmetics, which I'm more familiar with, it makes a difference because people are going to be putting it in their mouth, putting it on their skin, and so they want to make sure that everything is compliant. Kind of down in the very nitty gritty, for example, you can import something that has cinnamon in it as long as it's um, grown cinnamon, that it's not wild cinnamon. So you're thinking, oh, it's cinnamon. Well, you have to look at those very details. And that is a very specific example that some cinnamon was in the product,
Yeah.
and that got held up because they had to show exactly where is the cinnamon coming from. Is it wild cinnamon? Yeah. One other example, which I really loved, is that on the paperwork, a gin company brought in, and they had five botanicals listed, but on their website they talked about seven botanicals, and somebody in the customs said, "What? they didn't say, "Hey, which one is incorrect? Is there any, concern here?" They actually looked at the website and said, "Which document is lying?" So,
Oh,
it sounds like really wow, but that's the kind of level of being difference between being export eager and export ready.
right. So just understanding that getting into a country with a product involves a ton of paperwork, and to have your ducks in a row and understand what you're getting into and whether your product and the ingredients in it can even get into the country before you
Exactly.
start down that path of having all those conversations.
Yeah. It was, oh, I have the world's greatest chocolate bar with protein in it. Fantastic. But we have to make sure that we can get it all the way through so that you can show that to the client. And by doing all the work on the front side with myself, or again, we have trade commissioner services here on the federal side, is that then when you're in front of that buyer,
Hmm.
and we have the courage to say, yeah, this guy is ready. He knows what they're doing. So we're going to connect you to a qualified buyer. But you also will be able to answer and tick off yeah, I know this, I have that, instead of like, oh, I'll get back to you about that. And that sounds like a really small thing. Oh, I'll get back to you. We're 15 hours difference. Peter, you like really kept trying. You're in the night to bring this up so that I could, be on the same life pattern as yourselves. But it takes time, and then again you're thinking about, it's not your brothers to the south who speak the same language, so there's
Hmm.
back and forth. With You want to mitigate as many emails as you can, so when you're in front of that buyer you're ready like that. It makes a big difference.
I'm guessing one of the things that you can do too is because you and I have talked about this a bit before, is prep an eager exporter um, with things they wouldn't have even thought about, like the chemical profile of their product. Like you'd mentioned glyphosates in honey before, as an example.
Oh yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's just it. We absolutely want you to win. That's our role as well. And sometimes, to be able to give you those homework assignments, like, oh my God, would you just give me the the information? When you have to go through that process yourself, and you use myself, or well, both me here in Japan, or one of my other colleagues around the world. We have people in Korea and the US and China. We are here to help you, so that technicality, can we answer every question from like
Mhm.
cheese to honey to whatever? No, but we have these sources that we can go to. So when we give you some homework for it, I have a whole thing of readiness, of a readiness file that I will look at it for you. Here's your homework, send
Mhm.
it back to me, so when you're on the ground here, that you're ready to go out to the buyers. And I don't know if my colleagues around the world would agree or disagree, but Japan is a very tough market. And if you can get ready for Japan, then you can leverage that same material and go out to other parts of the world. There'll be some tweaking. For example, the rules of Korea are different than the rules of Japan. But if you have that foundation, you're able to, continue to diversify and grow.
Is it often the case that with food products, there's like a year lag in making your product compliant with the chemical profile requirements? Because you got to wait for a new batch of growing season to come around. You got to source it from a new place that's farmed different, or.
So if you're talking about commodities,
Mhm.
they'll ask you to send them all every year that you bring them in. They want to know there's a certain standard of what you need to do. So for example, going back to honey, the moisture content, the glyphosate, the clean caloric, those there'll be some things checks. Here's your outline of what you need to do, and then every year that you're bringing it in, you'll need to prove that. Now on the packaged goods side, basically you would have the same thing, and it takes a while for you to go back and forth to make sure it's compliant, sending samples over to them so they can also have it tested. So if you think in your mind, you come to a trade show and you give yourself, you're going to make a sale within a year, that's fast for Japan,
Okay.
because you're making decisions not only on compliance but on prices as well. And I think, one of the things that you guys have done well is to send someone like yourself out here and recognize that, okay, yeah, we're price sensitive. Oh, every
Mhm.
country is price sensitive, but we're price sensitive because the yen is so low. What does that mean? What does that process mean? So I have the product here. I got to spend money to ship it. I've got to spend some insurance money. And then by the time it gets to my importer, is that price going to work on the shelf? So taking the time to do that market research, and sometimes I can do that for you, but also it's great if people can come and experience that themselves.
Okay, so you've just mentioned the ability to do economic market research as well, not just advising on how to get your product into the country through the paperwork and how to manage the expectations of the buyer in terms of chemical profile. Can you talk about that economic advice and that market profiling?
Yeah, I guess I'll take something very simple, which is not simple, but whiskey. Let's take, for example, whiskey,
Sure. Yeah.
because we got some great whiskey in the province. So the kind of market research that I can do for you is, first of all, give you some, market trends. I can work with my trade commissioner services partners as well. Here's some of the trends that are happening. For example, actually, young people are drinking less, or where are they
Hmm.
drinking? So you want to see that big picture trends. But also, I will literally go take the phone out and go and say, here's the price, here's the price, here's the price, here's the price, here's the
Hmm.
price. But you and I have to work together, and I have some materials where you can go to a freight forwarder and say, "Okay, that's the price. Woo, look at that price on the shelf. Thank you. But what did it cost you to get here?" So, again, from your warehouse, what does it cost on the ship? What does it cost to travel? So those are kind of things that, I can't do it overnight. Like, oh, suddenly everybody in your region sends me something. Hey, what's the price on this? But if we spend some time together, and that you can ask yourself the tough questions too. I do think, I know I don't, it sounds like I've really bought into the whole thing, but maybe you can tell by my accent that I'm not originally from Alberta, but I can tell you that we are, in terms of agriculture, really the envy of all the other provinces, because we're the only province that has a dedicated person here. And so
Hmm.
some of that work that we can do for you, and if you give us the time to, give us the chance to get out there and look for you, sometimes our best information to you is, you know what? No, at this point in your in your pricing structure, Japan probably wouldn't be right for you. That saves you a ton of money too. Or you look like you're on the edge. If you just this or just that, maybe you could make it. Of course, at the end of the day, Peter, you well know that it's the decision of the business. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, I can only give you the information that I have.
Sure. So my next question is this. So you and I met because I went out and did a bunch of research about where should we be spending our efforts if we're looking to diversify our trade. And everything just kept pointing back at Japan. And then I talked to my colleagues and they're like, yeah, that's what we're looking at too. You're totally on the right track. Why is Japan such an interesting market for Canadian companies right now? What do you think the reason is behind that, and what are the possibilities?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the, like, right now kind of question. I do think though, when you're looking to diversify, because the world is upside down now a little bit with
Hmm.
trades and relationships, is that you want to diversify with intent. So why Japan? One of the one of the very basic things, if your research will tell you, we're only 38% food self-sufficient. So
Hmm.
that tells you that we have to import a lot of food. Now, what kind of food are we importing? More on the health side, on the commodity side, some of the packaged goods sides, but so it does make for a good fit. Obviously, Alberta has, huge amount of resources. So that's the starting of a good fit. We do appreciate quality.
Hmm.
I do think that Canada overall really has a great reputation in Japan as, trustworthy, good partnerships, respects the rule of law. I I think these are things that sound like, well, that's nice and oh yeah, but when it really gets down to it, it very much is a part of the decision making. One thing about investment, if you have folks in the room that are, looking about, well, how do I get the Japanese to invest? It's the same thing. Lots of times I say for Japan that it's trade on the road to investment. A little bit like dating, like you don't
Hmm.
want to marry that person straight out of the gate. So you do a little bit of trading to see, or some kind of smaller joint venture to see if the relationship is going to work, and then perhaps do some investment that way.
So, what cultural considerations going into Japan do Canadian companies need to understand when doing business over there? Because, like, the culture shock, it's real.
There's not, you know, I think for me, sometimes it's a little bit of a culture shock. You gotta be on time. You gotta deliver what you say you're gonna deliver. And that sounds, I think that we get, North Americans we might say like, hey, I'll get it to you Friday. And so you get it to me Tuesday, and everybody's okay with that. And, this is kind of, oh, I had my child's hockey game show up or something. But I think that in cultural, it's like if you tell me you're going to have it to me by 2 o'clock on Friday, it's my Friday, not your Friday, and you can have it at me at 10 o'clock in the morning, but at 2:30, I'm like, oh, wait a second, he said two, it's 2:30 now. I know
Mhm.
that sounds like wow, what kind of tyrant. And of course, everybody said, "Oh yeah, of course I understand that."
Mhm.
But I would say that was one of the biggest stumbling blocks that I see is that it's the capacity to say, if you think in your heart, I can get it to this person by Friday at 5, but I'm going to say I'm going to get it to him by next Tuesday at 7, then you give yourself that like just in case leeway is really important. So in terms of culture, I would say that's it. The timely responses, timely, commitments. I think it's very much organized that way. I think any country wants to work on a relationship of trust. I think we've all gone through some, you know, shocks that, woo, we can't trust you anymore. But I think that, so I think, uh, I think that any country wants to do that. But I suppose Japan is one of the things that they're going to put up there right away, saying, it's all about relationships, and I do think that's true. But part of that is dials back to like I told my boss that you're going to have it to me by 2, and now I told my boss 3 o'clock to give and it's still not here. It's
Mhm.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a bit looser with those kind of cultural rules over in Canada, but understanding the expectations and respecting them, I can be very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, what are the big opportunities you're seeing right now? What are the key sectors that are occupying a lot of your time? I'm sure everybody's really curious to know what's hot.
Well, in terms of actual commodities, it's really about the growing season of where you can actually make a difference. Where like Australia is having a drought, so then we're looking for that. One of the things that I have found is that people are looking for alternative proteins, and they're not necessarily looking for it the way we used to look for it, like the meat. To put it to additive or whatever, but I would still think that they're looking for actual alternatives. And obviously, this country has a lot with soy, and I know we don't grow soy, but when we started to talk about like, certain things about faba beans and other proteins that would be able to answer it and have less vitality of the growing or the pricing, they became very interested. So I would say that that's still on the radar as something, alternative proteins, because we don't have a lot of arable land for traditional proteins. That said, they're still looking for traditional proteins. If I hear it once, I hear it a million times. We need more beef.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And I still think, healthy alternatives as well. This is an aging country. It has to be something simpler, but healthy. Everybody thinks they want healthy. It still has to taste good, but healthy, I think, would be something that would be of great interest as well. Uh, Japan has always really welcomed a lot of our honey. If we can meet the the standards, I think honey is always something that's really looked at as well.
Okay. Do you have a couple of success stories of once again, I don't know if you can name names or not. If they're far enough back, perhaps it's all in the public domain. Folks that you've worked with who've successfully gotten into the market and what their journey was like.
Well, I'm going to take a risk that this is out there publicly enough that out of Edmonton, Cywin Foods has done a tremendous job of leveraging Japan. I don't. It's not by far. It's not their largest market anymore, but it was one of the first markets that they exported to. So they just leaned in and did the hard work, and they were able to bring in them to Costco Japan, and from the Costco Japan, then they leveraged it to make differences in their buying power in Canada with Costco.
Hmm.
So I think that would be one of the success stories, but they first came here pretty much like everybody else does, just exploring the market. What can we do? Where can we find some of what they thought they could do? We went to, door to door to door practically, and recognized, what? We can't really make it here with this particular product that we have, but we can make it in Costco Japan with this unique product of supporting for Filipinos, if you can believe it. So they to continue, because we have a Filipino uh, culture here, and so
Yeah.
they just found that niche program, but what didn't happen overnight. And that would be the thing that I say, couple of things, that they were able to make some small adjustments, like, oh, you can't have that much salt in it, or that's too sweet. And that they also just continued to come until they could make the market work. And because it worked, for example, in Costco Japan here, then they were able to make some headways with in Canada as well, and they've become even more successful within the province and within Canada, and had other opportunities around the world.
Right. But then you put in the work, and I'm getting the sense that it takes time to put in the work. But then once you're in and you found your niche, you're in a market that's one of the top economies in the globe that has over 100 million people, a very, very strong market that's wealthy, um, and can afford to sustain that purchasing power over time.
Well, you have it exactly, Peter. That I feel like, and thank you for saying that. They put in the work. They put in the time. They put in the work. It's not for the faint of heart. If you're coming on a shoestring and you think, oh, I can't make it, then probably better think about this, because even to send your samples over, it's quite expensive, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um, I will say that they are still Japan isn't just transactional. It's a little lighter transactional than it used to be. Like, if you asked me 10 years ago, I would say no. But once you become a partner, they're going to stick with you for a while and try to make that partnership work, because they've also risked. They've also spent time. They've also spent money. So the
Hmm.
decision process will be slow. Then when you get the go, my goodness, you better be ready to go, because they'll move it fast, the fast forward. But then there's the contingency. It's not like, oh, it's done, yay, we're in. You have to continually make the recommitments. And there's only I don't ask people to learn to speak Japanese. In fact, please don't. Make your efforts on on your products, but there's one word, kaizen, which it means continuous improvement. Like, they might even say, "Oh, everything was great, but if you could just turn the corner here a little bit, and then we'll, even be better." And you think, "Oh my God, what else are you going to ask me?" But the truth is that one tiny little improvement will help them get to the next level, which will help them to the next level. So I think those are things that, for example, Acai Foods really did lean in and do a good job with. Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody on the call who's listening today then wants to reach out to you and start the journey, what does that usually look like? What do your first introductory conversations look like, and how do you start folks off?
Yeah. Okay. I thank you for asking that question. Please don't jump over my great colleagues at the government of Alberta, in right there in Edmonton and in Calgary. So generally, if you're making your first call, we ask you to work with them. And if you don't, you're thinking, oh, I don't know who to reach out to, then yeah, reach out to me. But I might say to you, hey, can you talk to this person? Right now, we have a slight opening in the Japan file, but because they have this much information to start off with. And
Hmm.
so that frees me up to be able to I'm in market to be concentrating on these companies that are maybe just a little bit more ready. And you think,
Right.
"Oh no, I just want to skip this part and get to here." But I have to tell you that this part is they've got some amazing resources and capacities to be able to get you. Then when you get to my stage of it, I'm able to even to move you along the line further. So if I'm right down here working so hard on all these maybe questions that could be answered by somebody else, I'm not getting a chance to make the B2B introductions. And you want me to doing that when it's your turn to get there. So reach out to me, but I might actually send you right back to the one of my colleagues in the ministry. And that's not a matter of like, "Ooh, I'm going to play the hot potato card." If you're like super ready, I'll talk to you as well. But if I can tell, like,
Hmm.
what, we need a little bit more groundwork, I would do that. And there's so many resources in the province. Now, if you're looking for coming for a trade show, we do put out all the information. I know that we'll next year, looking at 2027, we've already committed to being able to do something called the Health Ingredients Show. We also have Canada Food Expo, which is something we do smaller. It's for smaller companies, and that will be happening probably in September,
Okay.
where we work with with the embassy here, and we have a kind of tabletop. We put those calls out on the Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation newsletter thing, and then we ask for applications. So that process, once you submit your application or accept it, then you have me right away.
Nice.
But I mean, I always talk about that. It's not just passing you back to the home office. I'm telling you, those people really care too, and are very, very smart, and have a
No,
lot
that
of
makes sense.
good opportunities. Yeah,
Somebody right here in Edmonton can basically look at what they want to take and ask some basic filtering questions that put them at the right stage. Like, okay, you want to make sure you
100%.
have this stuff in line before we bother the person who's in market to start setting up B2B meetings or get you into trade shows.
Exactly,
Yeah. Because
exactly.
even
And
bringing in
I
samples for a trade show is probably a bit of a beast.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and that's why I definitely you think, "Oh my gosh, this trade show isn't happening." So for we'll have a very big trade show called FoodX in March. We start recruiting for it in the summer and start working with companies as early as October and November because as you just astutely said, getting in the samples for it is not easy. Again, it's all about the compliance. But
Hmm.
and it's kind of, oh my God, I just want to go to the trade show and show and sell. You know what? By going through all that work, then the buyer knows that you're more ready. And
Hmm.
you have to be, compliant and ready. So that is also very helpful, I
And you're
think.
several
Yeah.
steps down the road, anyways, towards if you're actually going to start bringing in small amounts of product.
100%. And I do wanna say too, I've come, thanks for the conversation today, and I maybe unfortunately to my mind has come up with more of the examples of Edmonton or Calgary or something, but one of the biggest things that we care about, we're agriculture, so we care about every region.
Hmm.
All these regions are something that we will, send out people to come. I've gone, so I've gone from, top to bottom, and I do want you to recognize that we will go, and that my colleagues will drive buyers out there. So we are not just committed to two regions.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some of them just this week. So,
That's good to know. And we come out with happy hearts. We want to get out. We want
mhm.
to come out and see because that's where the real action's happening, really, in the fields. And I would say that that's the other thing when the Japanese when they come, they're not coming to the province, to some sorry, I shouldn't say it this way, but whatever. They're not going to come just for the rodeo. They want to come. They want to return on their investment. They want to see how the operation is. So that was one thing is, and this happens a lot. You're asking for examples of for beef. That was another thing. I brought a buyer in, and they want to see the plant because they have
Mhm.
to go back to their potential. Importer has to go back to their potential buyers and say, I saw it with my own eyes. I met these standards. Look at these pictures, and that is, their trust value as well. So whether it be from small, you know, like canola fields or wheat fields or production of some sort, they will want to come, and they're not coming just to see the mountains for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final takeaways or advice for our folks today?
It is a good it is a good market. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak that this market is a good market, and other Alberta companies have made it, and you can make it too if you're willing to put in the work and the effort. And so, while it is time consuming or daunting at first, that people have made it, and Albertans are serious, and we have good products, we have good opportunities. So I do think Japan is a good market and a good fit. So I'd love to, support who I could in the market.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, no, really appreciate you talking to our folks. And with any luck, we'll see you again next fall and with some of the folks who are on the call along for the
Yeah,
ride.
I hope so too. But I hope too during your lunch and learn that people really reach out to you because you had experience in two markets, and so you can really speak to it. So don't let him get away with just eating a sandwich. You guys get him on him. Get some of Peter's advice as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mary
you.
Beth.
Thank you.